Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so um, we're gonna talk a little bit about only the gifted, being a gifted one, and kind of what that traditionally kind of looks like. So typically, um, gifted children, gifted babies, gifted adolescents, gifted adults, gifted preteens, teenagers, whatever you want to call it. Um, in my observation and in my experience, being gifted and unaware almost always looks like a very hard beginning. So what I mean by that is the gifted ones are always the ones that endure the most trauma, the most pain, the most discomfort, the most hindrance things, and it's usually very early on in life, or they're abandoned, they're abused, and abuse can come in any form. It could be mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. It could be sexual. They're typically the ones that are mishandled the most very early on in life. And so, what happens as a result? It stagnates a certain part of their being. So, for an example, if I am spiritually gifted at healing others, right? I'm going to endure a lot of distress and hardship as it relates to self in order to heal self so that I can heal others. So, if my specific call is to help people that have been sexually molested, I may, as a child, have to experience sexual molestation in order to internalize what that really feels like, what that really looks like, and what that does to the psyche, the mentality, how it stagnates growth, how it creates a disconnect from the world. All of these aspects that are attributed to someone that has endured that in order to be able to see that and in order to be able to identify with that and know it when I see it. Now, is it a messed up way for things to be? Indeed, it is. But um a lot of addicts like to say that people that are not addicts can't help addicts, right? Because you don't know the physical attributes that they experience. You don't understand the withdrawal that they experience. You don't understand the mentality and the mindset that they experience. So if you're not an addict, you can give me all the book knowledge you want, but you don't have that personal experience to be able to help me deal with these cravings or deal with, these demons that I'm fighting with. And to a certain degree, they are correct, but there have been many of people that have not been addicts that have been able to successfully treat and handle addicts. In the same light, too, there's plenty of people that have not been abused that have been able to help and heal abused people. But the gifted ones, the ones that are not your social workers, the ones that are not your mental health professionals, the ones that are not your counselors or your doctors or your counselors or your pastors or whomever that are in these professional roles, the ones that are just spiritually being led and doing the work and doing the healing work, they have endured these great traumas and these great turmoils very early on in life. And um it cuts them off to a certain degree, but the ones that heal, they come back and they bounce back and they are these great beings. Now the ones that don't heal, they're typically the ones that are walking around with these gifts on the inside. And so as a result, especially if they don't get the healing that they need, they they're your, your overly sexualized men and women, or they're very under sexualized, meaning that they care or choose not to kind of engage in sexual activities, because to them it's seen as something bad because of the something bad that happened to them, or it's something that's used as a tool to get what they want, because they learned that this other person got what they wanted as a result of using this sexualized weapon, which would have been their vagina or their penis or their mouth or what have you, whatever happened. So, to get back on track, so the spiritually gifted, right? They often endure some type of hardship earlier on in life, and a lot of times it's very, hindrance. Like I said, it's molestation, is rape, it's or it's abandonment or neglect, or not being acknowledged, or constantly being put down, or pretty much it's anything and everything attempting to tell you that you are not who you actually are. So if earlier on in your life or in your younger years you were put in positions where you were kind of told that you were not who you knew you were already on the inside, it was a reprogramming to kind of distract you and get you off track on being who you are authentically. So that's that's like the first point, right? When it comes to identifying, am I spiritually gifted? We all have gifts. We all have talents. We all have the ability to kind of heal ourselves, and in turn we can heal others. But there are a certain select few of individuals that have been placed on the earth to do kind of mega things. And that's kind of like healing masses, and that's where you have like these big healers, or these big prophetic people, or these big ordained pastors, or bishops and things like that. There's a calling on their life, and if you listen to their stories, their backdrop, their history, there's always an immense amount of pain and turmoil and trauma that was experienced prior to them getting to where they are. And so that would be the kind of like the first sign of identifying, like, hey, am I a spiritually gifted person? And if the answer to that is yes, then yes, you are. The second thing I would say is, um, if you're always kind of feeling like you don't never like belong or you don't fit, right? So even in your family, this is your family, right? You never feel like you like a part of the family. Like you in the family, but you're not a part of the family. It always seems like it's them and you. Even if it's, you and your sisters, it's you and then it's your two sisters, or it's you and your sister and your brother, or it's you and your family, even though you're all a family. Or when you're around your friends, you're feeling like it's you and them. It's like everyone seems more closer and connected than you are to them. And they may in turn say the same thing about you. Like they feel like there's a disconnect with you because they can't connect with you. But the same thing that you're saying that you're feeling or experiencing, they're saying the same thing about you. That would be the second thing on identifying whether or not you're this really spiritually gifted person. The next thing is like kind of like really always being in the know, like you always know like something, like you have a knowledge, or you have wisdom, or you have an understanding, or you have like a deep emotional connection to like pains and hurts and traumas of other people. Now, disclaimer about that, if you've been victimized, or if you've been traumatized, or if you've been hurt, one or two things are going to happen. You're going to be very empathetic and receptive to hurt and traumatized people, or you'll become very defensive towards that. So, if either of the two are happening for you, that's also an indication of you being spiritually gifted. And it just means that you have never healed from the trauma that you endured, and you were never kind of able to reconcile with whatever has happened. So one of those two things are going to happen. You're going to be able to connect with it, or you're going to be very resistant to it. You're not going to be able to be empathetic to it at all. The next thing that I would say, a spiritually gifted person would be is, or would look like, is if people are always kind of referring to you as like being a maybe a leader, or being someone that gets things done. Um, and maybe I'm not explaining that the right way, but um, people always kind of look for you for guidance or direction or understanding, because they know that like you can give that to them, right? Like they open up to you easily, they share things with you easily, and you seem to get it, right? You do seem to get it, and then you almost always have an answer, or you almost always have an ability to help solve the problem. And as a result, it's because of your ability to be able to internalize the hurt or the pain that they've experienced or that they are experiencing, or whatever the situation may be at that time. Spiritually gifted people also um, have a kind of like an odd way of navigating through the earth, whether they know they do or not. Like with me, people always tell me that they always ask me where I'm from. So I live in the South, but I'm from the North, right? And I lived in the North all my life until I went to college, and then I moved to the South, and then I just actually like end up staying there, right? And so people always say, you move different. You don't move like everybody else. Like they're always trying to figure you out. I guess that would kind of be what it is. Like they're always watching and always trying to figure out how you're doing what you're doing. That's another sign of you being spiritually gifted. And it's almost always a result of kind of you intuitively allowing yourself to be led. So you, unbeknownst to you, you may not know that you're following your intuition, or you're following your instinct, or you're following your gut, because the world kind of tells you to turn that off once you're born into the world, and you enter primary school and elementary school and high school and all that other stuff. They kind of desensitize you to that. But the spiritually gifted ones, you're able to kind of feed that in and then feed that out and still do what you need to do um instinctively. And so as a result, people are always watching you, and they're always trying to figure out what you're doing or how you're doing what you're doing. And things that may seem to be, this would be the next point too, seems things that may seem to be very hard for others is always easy to you. Like what may seem like a challenge to someone else is something like the back of your hand to you. An example of that would be like with school. Like for me, school has always been like a tough thing for me, in a sense of like I always felt like I never really kind of grasped it. Like I have a PhD in psychology, but it's not finished yet, but I do have a PhD in psychology, right? I'm on my dissertation. But I have a PhD in psychology, right? But school has always been kind of hard for me. So I've never been on grade level as it relates to reading or like math skills. My communication skills have always been pretty good. My writing, I guess, has been whatever, probably behind too. And so I've always had a hard time with that, but I've always kind of excelled in the sense of I've always been able to pursue higher education and do very well, even though during the onset I was all, but I still can't spell though either, right? And sometimes I can't read either, so I don't know how I got a PhD. But it's always been something that's been kind of hard for me, like that's just my perspective, my thought process. But when other people reflect on me, on what they see, it's like, you've always, gotten things done, or you've always been the scholar, or you've always been good at this and good at that. And in my eyes, it's like, I just kept going. I just kept going because I knew that if I kept going, that I would eventually get it, or I would eventually get it done. Just keep going, keep going. And so that would be another kind of like sign of like you identifying whether or not you're like a spiritually gifted person, where things that people keep saying, are very hard for them or hard for the norm, you just seem to like seamlessly just get it done, or you're just good at it, right? And that's another point too. You're naturally gifted or good at anything. Like even things that you don't have prior knowledge to, you kind of have a knowing of it. And it's like second nature to you as well. Like my orthodontist used to get pissed at me when I would go to get my braces tightened, because when they would be adjusting my wires and my rubber bands, like he wouldn't put them on, I guess, like tight enough or something. And so I would literally be telling this man. Now this man went to school for how many years? He has a very successful dentist orthodontist practice. I think he has like maybe two or three, so it's not like he don't know what he's doing. But it was like I was guiding him on how to help me get my teeth the way that I wanted them to, and how to effectively do that, because what he was doing wasn't moving my teeth fast enough. And so somehow I had learned some trick or something to kind of put the rubber bands on that would pull my teeth a lot faster than what he was doing. And he was like, you know, how are you doing that? What are you doing to your teeth that's making your teeth progress so fast? I guess the results that he was seeing probably could have took maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and it was happening in my 2 week checkups. And so it's things like that, like examples like that, where you have a knowing about certain things. Another point is, most really gifted people are very intuitive in nature. And so most of the time, you can read people very well. So you can hear what people are saying, but you know what they mean. And so your response or your reaction to them is not really based off of what they're saying, it's based off of what they actually mean. And sometimes that can throw people off, because people can be very manipulative, right? And so they'll maybe be like, hey girl, how you doing? I like that outfit. And really, in their head or in their emotions or their intentions, what they're really thinking is, oh, she thinks she all that. And so when they say, hey girl, how you doing? I like that outfit, and you actually hear, oh, she thinks she all that, you respond to, oh, you think she's all that, versus the, hey girl, how you doing? I like that outfit. And so then in turn, that kind of throws people off, because they start to feel or they see a different side of you versus who you are authentically. Because authentically, I can't say the word right now, I'm sorry. But because who you are naturally to your core, and how you feel people and how you experience people and how you're able to read people, they're expecting you to respond to that persona that they're projecting at you, and you're actually responding to the intent, because that's what you feel, that's what you know, that's what you're experiencing. You're not going off of what's the facade that's being presented. And so oftentimes people will say they don't know how to read you. They'll say that they don't know how to approach you, or they'll say that they don't know like what they're going to get from you. And that's because you're always in a place, in a position where um like you can feel and you can read people. And I guess that's kind of like a two in one. So you can read people and you know people's intentions, but you can also kind of like feel them. Another sign of a gifted person, that I've noticed or have experienced, that is that you're either extremely bright very early on in life, meaning that you're excelling at everything, or you're behind. And usually the ones that are behind are the ones that are usually being led more intuitively. So they are responding more to their internal excellence. They're responding more to their intuitive excellence, their spiritual excellence, their divine excellence, beknownst to them or unbeknownst to them. And the ones that are excelling um in the physical realm, in the actual world, they're gifted too. But they're typically not your healers. They're typically not your empaths, or they're typically not your star seeds. They're typically not your rainbow children. They're typically not your agents that have been sent here to do, not saying that they weren't sent here to do massive things, because everyone has a call to kind of move generations. But the real gifted ones, the ones that are here really to like fuck shit up and make some changes, typically they're the ones that are more kind of the delayed ones, in a sense of not excelling based off of their age and worldly requirements, like in academics or even their maturity. So they may be a little regressive in their communication. They may be a little aggressive in their maturity, and this could be for male and females. They could lack the ability to connect with friends. They're usually a little bit more behind their pack. And when I say their pack, I mean like their age bracket. So they'll usually connect very well with those right ahead of them, and they'll usually connect very well with those right behind them. But the people that are on their playing field, they usually don't have a very good idea. I mean, a very good connection, and that's because they can't relate, because they're more advanced in some areas where they're able to connect with those that are ahead of them, and then in the areas where they're not as advanced, they're able to connect with those that are behind them. And the ones that are on their level, they can't connect with them because they have these advancements in this area, and then they have these delays in this area. Um, spiritually gifted spiritually gifted children, adults, adolescents, and youth are typically very creative, in a sense where they're musically inclined. They're artistically inclined in the arts, whether it's dance, actual art like paint and things like that. Um, uh, like actors and actresses, poets. They're very artistic in nature. And usually, when a trauma is experienced earlier on, it suppresses that creative ability. And so the freedom to be able to express thoughts and feelings and emotions and gifts becomes hibernated within. And they don't trust the ability sometimes to use that as a source of an outlet, or sometimes it is used as an outlet to express, and tap into to gifts. And when that's done, it's typically because there is an empathetic family that's involved, or individuals that help bring that out, or there's been some counseling or therapy that's been done. So this will kind of be like, I don't know if I'm going to do a different a next part on this, but this is just some of my observations, experiences, and understanding of what um, spiritually gifted adolescents, children, and adults kind of look like. And I guess in adulthood, I gave an example of, hearing and seeing and feeling. And kids are that way too. But also in adulthood, a lot of adults that are spiritually gifted and as well, and they may not know they are, they're typically loners. Um, they typically like to have a lot of time and space to themselves. If they're empathetic in nature, and introverted, they typically don't do well in like big crowds because they can feel everything. If they're extroverted and more like outgoing in their actions and their communications and their behaviors, they're typically the ones that are doing things to try to take the spotlight off of them. And so when I say take the spotlight off of them, if they're like outgoing and like, like they're the life of the party, they're doing that so that you can't really see the gift that they have. So they're normally like the class clown, or they're normally like the one that always gets the party started, or they're the ones that always come in and are able to give you a good laugh, or the ones that are always able to kind of cheer up maybe a somber environment. And again, that's so that you're not able to identify the gift that is within them. And they may have had some experiences where they noticed that people were able to notice the gift that was in them. And so they've tried alternative ways to kind of distract from that, where people can't kind of tap into that. But they're not turning it off. They think they're turning it off, but they're not turning it off. They think it's a distraction. And those that are looking, those that are seeking, and those that are vampires and stealers and all those other things, they see right through that. And so they're not turning it off. So that's that for spiritually gifted children, adults, adolescents, youth, and all those that fall in between there. I don't know if I'll do a part two on this. Again, Spirit is leading me to use my voice. Spirit said I said use your voice, and I didn't mean your written voice, but I mean your actual voice. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to be doing um, a series of just different experiences, and a series of different experiences that I have encountered and endured over these last 4 or 5 years of my awakening, and just being able to identify things that have kind of led me to see that, I'm really not like everybody else. Like, I'm not better than nobody else, but I know that I'm not like everybody else. And as such, I have been able to navigate through life in a way that's much different than everybody else. In that I see life different than everybody else. But you, in turn, as well, have navigated life based off of the the things that you've experienced and endured throughout your life. You see life from a certain lens. You experience life from a certain perspective, and you project life based on those things. And so, at this point in my life, I'm just trying to help those along the way, as I was able to kind of look and search and find things that kind of helped me along my way. And that's what we're supposed to do. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this at that. Okay. All right. That's all I have. Valencia's voice that echoes in the earth realm.